First, a bit about myself. I am born to a family of 15 children. I'm the oldest of those 15. And I went to school in a little place called Enid, Oklahoma. Born in a tiny, infinitesimal place called Kingfisher, Oklahoma. About 30 miles apart. Kingfisher was so small that if you blinked your eye, you were through the city. So they didn't call them cities, they called them towns and cow stops. That's where I was born. Enid was a little larger. You could say something on this side of town and literally hear it on the other side. But at any rate, I also went to a school called Booker T. Washington. A lot of schools were named Booker T. Washington across the country. At Booker T. Washington, we were taught that you have to be 10 times better than white people in order to make it in America. How many of you were taught that kind of philosophy? Remember those days? You that can't raise your hands, you probably don't believe you have to be better than anybody to make it, if you could just be equal somehow. But we were told you had to be 10 times better to be successful. And of course, our generation, we have a certain tenacity for being better at whatever we do. Booker T. Washington also was known to have at least 90% of all the graduates went to college. No exceptions. Year after year after year, from the inception of Booker T. Washington, which at its inception was a one-room school. From that point to this point, I shouldn't say to this point, but to the point of integration, it was 90% went to college. After integration, it was reversed. 90% do not go to college, only 10% go. And you probably are noticing that same type of phenomenon taking place in New Orleans. It certainly is happening in every city across the country. It is now a statistical report that 50% of all so-called black students are dropping out of school in every city in the country. 50%. That means they are out of school by the time they are 14, 13, 14, whatever, just hanging out in the streets, selling drugs, doing those things that we know about, gang activity. It's not getting any better. Even America is known to have dropped down to number 19 in comparison to the industrialized world in science, math, etc. Can you imagine a white teacher standing up saying, all of you little black kids out there in this classroom, you're going to have to be 10 times better than me and all these white kids in this classroom? Can you imagine such taking place today? Of course not. What would happen to her? She would get fired. So we don't have to wonder about a black teacher having nerve to say that in an integrated classroom. That's out of the question, isn't it? It certainly is. But anyway, I bought the story because everybody else was buying it. I was among that 90% that went to college, so I went. And I went to Texas College, majored in math and music. I looked around on my campus. I didn't see a professor that had moved from poverty to riches. None of the students had moved from poverty to riches. So before I could, pursue it further, I got this wonderful letter from the United States government. Can you imagine the United States government being interested in me, a freshman? Yeah, they were interested. They sent me a beautiful letter from the United States government. Greetings. You sisters don't know what I'm talking about. See, y'all don't get these kind of letters. But some of us brothers got letters. How many have ever gotten a letter like that from the government? It said, greetings. You are invited to come and die in Korea. Now, some of my relatives own funeral homes, and I've never seen a dead fella get up and move from nowhere to nowhere. Everybody had to move the dead wherever they went. So I wasn't about to die for no country. I hadn't found the keys to riches yet. I have to have some of that before we talk about dying. I want to at least be in heaven twice. On earth, and if there's another one, I'm going there too. But how many heard you go to heaven after you die? All the riches and all the pie and the honey and the milk, all that stuff come after death in Beulah's land. No, I just couldn't buy none of that. So I looked around, I found out the Navy wasn't for me because ships get blown out the water and people drown way out there in the middle of the ocean. So I couldn't join no Navy. And the Army was the one sent me that letter, and I knew I didn't want to be a paratrooper jumping out of no airplane like I was a bird, break your leg, your neck, and get shot out the air. Then the Marines, they were just crazy. You know, they just run at a hill, people shooting at them, they don't have nothing. They just, they just die like flies. I knew the Marines was not for me. So I didn't have one choice left. What was that? Air Force, right. But I wasn't flying no plane. They get shot out the sky, they crash, and didn't want to work on one because they might get blown up just for being a mechanic. So since I had majored in math, I became a math teacher in the Air Force and a tactical instructor. You know what a tactical instructor is? That's one who trained troops. So what I did was train white boys to be patriotic so they could die for their country. You see, I understood well that nobody in Korea had ever called me nigger. Nobody could convince me to go shoot some brown folk who hadn't done nothing to me. And they were talking about kill your enemy. So we're not going to get off into all that, but I didn't buy none of that garbage.